Cece, you can't hear us, Cece?
Check if you're muted maybe, or your volume on your computer. Everybody else can hear us, right? Any thumbs up there, Pam, Bud, Andrew? Yeah, all right. So I would say check computer.
Yeah, and
sound.
Cece, you may have to pop back, try popping out and in, that may help. So
That's right, like an out and back in, so.
but we have quorum, so we can get going.
Perfect. Yeah, well, let's go ahead. We'll call the meeting to order, and then there's no visitors that, as far as visitor comments or anything. Cece, maybe just try hopping off and then come back in. Since your video is not going to.
My video doesn't work a lot of times.
On the.
I mean, when you see me
Yeah,
on Zoom, and it's not because
you're not logging on,
No,
or,
it
yeah.
just, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I had my wife look at it. She
How to
can't-
type.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, and I don't use it very much for
Start
work,
typing.
so I don't really,
Yeah.
I don't know too much about the troubleshooting at
No,
all.
no.
So,
Yes.
well, should we pull up the roundtable and business survey down? Is it the
Yeah, we-
easiest? Probably to just pull it up,
Yeah.
put it on the screen.
So why don't I'll pull that up and let me just preface a couple things. So again, a reminder, next, is it the 23rd, I think is our next
Yes.
meeting? We'll plan on talking about how, what we're gonna talk about today goes into some potential for business plan was the agenda, right? So today is really for us to go through and distill back again, what were the themes, the issues that we saw coming out of both the roundtable and the survey.
Yep.
That will help us inform that idea for a business, the business plan. I use that term to talk about how that $100,000 could be programmed, if you think we need more, if it's, if it's a waste, let's just be honest. I mean, all those things are on the table so for us, to get your recommendations.
That's great.
So I will pull up we'll just do, let me get here. Let me go this way and share the screen, and then we'll make everything small if you can all see it. Get this guy up there. So, Chrome. So the survey, Mr. Chair, how do you want to start and walk through this? Do you want to go around the table? Do you want to actually walk through each question? What are your
That's
thoughts?
a good question. I kind of looked at it briefly. I mean, I would say, the people that are on, on video, if we get some commentary, if you want to unmute, if you are muted. And then maybe why don't we just go ahead and, I think we could probably just bounce through the questions. don't you
I think we should just go through each question.
That's what I think. I don't necessarily
Without-
minimize. one.
Without much comment.
Yeah,
Just kind of go through the results. Let's talk about each question.
Sure.
yeah,
And then we'll talk about everything at the end.
let's do that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
So I'm gonna go to the PDF version then. So these are all available to you and you have them, but this is the PDF of each question. I'm gonna scroll through these first, the business name, the contact
Sure.
and such. But so ultimately, so there were 67 people who submitted, but each question you'll see this answered and skipped.
Okay.
So actually, 65, I think 60, a couple may have been a double, so Survey Monkey counts them. So obviously, as we go farther in the survey, you see less answering going on.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm gonna just keep scrolling down through these ones that we don't need to look at. You all should have this file. If for some reason you don't, let me know and we will send it to you. So we're good. It's a lot of pages here. We have a lot of great data to use, even from 65 of you all, so. Phone numbers are always good. Emails are better. Fran likes those.
If they respond.
That's
right.
true, yeah. Next code we don't need. All right, so we'll get in here. The first question, that first issue that comes up, how long have we been in operation? So let me get, if I can get this to hide. This side. So how long have we been in operation? Select one, and at this time in all previous locations. And so we've got a lot of our respondents over 20 years, and then a variety throughout the age spectrum of the business. But a more mature response in terms of the businesses responding.
Mhm.
Is that about the right amount of commentary you want from
I
me
think
on
so.
those?
I think so.
Does that work for everyone? Okay. Then obviously business established, we don't need to go through those dates. I think you all sit through that. How long have you been the owner of your business? So here, a place where that falls back a little bit, some of those businesses have been around a while, but we don't see the owners at quite the high percentage.
Mhm.
Okay, but again, pretty solid ownership and mature ownership generally in the response pool. Owner leasing, own or lease the space. We've got own, well over majority of the respondents lease well over 40%, and then a chunk that do lease and want to own. So, which of course, or want to purchase.
About 5%.
Yeah. So, about 5 right there, 5.77.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you always hear there's so many people leasing.
So how much fair square footage is here? And so when you look at the responses, sales space 47%, 26% production space. Now, these aren't going to all add up to 100 all the way down, but when you see the predominance here, office space, storage space, unused space and such. So you can see some of the different amounts here and through that. This is just helpful in case we're looking at land issues. We'll get to commentary on if we want to talk about land issues, then at least some of my perspectives on it. Parking, we kicked right off with parking. I'm just gonna check my chat real quick. Okay, thanks, Cece, glad you're in. Where do customers typically park? On the street, in the private parking lot. 50% of them said in their private parking lot. Look at our public usage for customers. Other, please specify, so we can scroll down and look here. Don't have visiting customers, no need for it. Usually those kinds of folks are a driveway. How far do they typically have to park from your business? Obviously, if we see a low response in public parking, then they're parking near the entry likely if they're in that area, which is not surprising. And one of the things I've noticed, but we'll get to the commentary. So half block away, a little bit block away, but obviously no long commutes being reported here out of this pool. Same now with parking spaces available for customers. You have some great numbers here. You got everything up to, I think, 20 there, 92. Somebody's got 92 parking spaces. I'd like to know who that person is, so we'll figure that one out. Where do your employees typically park? So here, coming off the street and into a private parking lot, predominantly. And in a public parking lot, growing in numbers over the customers. Not surprisingly, when you go here, where employees typically parking near the entry again. And so we've talked about this in some of the parking issues about, who should park near entries and should it be staff or customers? So how many parking spaces for employees? Again, some high numbers in some of these, so I think they might be commingled, but they may not. They may be legitimate, employee numbers. So that's, data for you all. Percentage of employees who live here in Webster Groves. I expect these numbers to be incredibly small. This 100, I would imagine, is probably a small number of employees.
Sure.
But in general, we're not seeing a lot of.
Well, 16 is the one with all the lots of employees and the
Sure.
lots of space,
Yeah.
and they don't have anybody from
Right.
Webster.
Moving on. How many do we employ in full-time categories? So we've got full-time year-round. You can see all sorts of numbers here. You got some big employers at 130. Down to small folks of 135. So we've got a good, not statistically valid, it's not a full polling here, but we've got a good variety of numbers of employees, full-time year-round. Part-time year-round. Again, a higher number, certainly a big number there. Seasonals as well, much smaller. Comments, questions, concerns on that section? More permits available from one owner, sole owner, no employees, customers do not come to business, so very home-based sounds like, or working in that regard, another home-based business there. Those were, again, we left a comment section at the end of each section. It's now into hours of operation. Here you see Monday 10 to 6. You're going to see most of your hours are going to be Monday through Friday. On a lot of these businesses, you see some hours, looks like maybe a little construction hours here, early morning hours. Throughout the days going on. Not unsurprising comments there. Was interesting when you look at that. And then Saturday, Sunday, of course, differing hours for many of the businesses. When we get down to when are things happening, business, that's interesting. Online purchases. Surprisingly, given where COVID is, now this might be the type of business, I would have expected to see some more yeses there.
Yeah, I agree. I would have too, but again, if you go back to type of business.
Exactly, yeah. So we don't know what the type of business is without cross-checking or cross-tabbing all that data, so. Thoughts on store hours? I'm gonna swing down to this one so you can see it a little easier. I'm open all the hours I need to be predominantly taken away. So at least from this sample, most people feel like they're open all the hours they need to be. Of course, well down, but still a second place, but only 4 respondents. Open more hours, but can't find staff. One of the issues that does keep reoccurring in my read of things. So this is typical week, the 7 busiest times, so you can select up to 7. I think as you scroll down, I'm gonna get the total here, so 2 p.m., this is the afternoon hour, so you've got the morning in green, mid-morning to early afternoon in blue, later afternoon to early evening here to 5 in orange. What you really see, what stands out when you look at it is this Saturday, Sunday, middle afternoon to early evening, and Friday obviously standing out, and really a balance other than the morning hours, as you see on Tuesday, Wednesday coming through. So again, type of business, what are we talking about? Restaurant eateries, but I'm imagining these Saturday, Sundays are retails, and such that we're seeing. We'll have that data. I'll just keep scrolling through. 3 busiest months, not surprising. We are a warm weather business month in the town here. Not bad showings. Surprised about September a little bit. Don't know what that's about. It's my birthday month, so it's a little off-putting. But
Surprised about November, December.
yeah, right. I mean,
Right, people are restaurants, Christmas parties,
Right.
retail.
I would think most people do pretty well in November, December. I would think January would be the lowest. September makes a little sense to me because of back to school. People spend
Sure.
money and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and kids are getting back, but.
right. I mean, I would expect January and it's pretty balanced across there. You get in the warmer months, okay. But you're right. I mean, our holiday shopping, at least for this respondent pool, didn't
Yeah,
come
how
up
many of them were restaurants?
again,
It's
right?
like the one
Exactly.
restaurant that I specifically looked at,
Mhm.
their busiest was the last 3 months of the year.
Makes sense, yeah.
Clients, when do clients visit the business during the summer months of May to October? How many clients visit during the business week? So none, and less than 50 all coming in. So
Makes sense.
typical small business pool that we're dealing with, probably gonna get that. So, very small responses here for the larger number of customers. How many visit over the winter months? Again, none grows a little bit, less than 50, and then you see a little bit of drop off there, but not unsurprising given what we just looked at. Following zip codes, obviously, looks like we like to shop local as we keep it local, and then, we look farther away into places, so overall, not unsurprising. You can see the numbers by zip code that people estimate. That's what makes this packet so big. Target market of the business. This was a surprising one to me. Never target marketed. I'm gonna check participants, just make sure we got everyone. So obviously, most businesses are not picking a target market, which is fine, but it is a helpful thing in operating a business. In terms of gender, in terms of the target market of age, much the same. We did see some folks, shoot up in that 25 to 44. But again, not a lot of responses there compared to the never target. Household income, much the same, not targeting, except we do see a jump up there for the, a wealthier upper end class household. $150,000 household is not wealthy by any means, but in terms of the scale we present.
What we showed them,
yeah. 6 products that differentiate you from your competition. So these are answers that we got. I won't read through them all. We'll just roll through. I'm seeing, as we asked for, some of our contractors, that do business here in the city did answer this, so that is good. Digital marketing popping in there, ISP, graphic design, no competition from a legitimate B&B, so that's good. So just lots of good data about what people think pushes them apart. Again, not a lot of responses.
A lot of responses from your sewer lateral.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's like you got 4 or 5
Award-winning
of them.
chili. That one?
What was it?
Award-winning chili.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That would be Bob Weber. I don't know. I'm joking.
No, that's either Robust or Cardamore.
Okay.
yeah.
Toughest competition for your business, up to 3 by name. So Just gonna, these I'll go a little slower through, so if you see some big boys in the field that cause issues that you're aware of. It's interesting to me to see some real locals here and not, I haven't seen a lot of major like corporate entities.
No, I would say they're larger local
Right.
businesses
Yeah.
that they view as
Yeah.
threats.
Yeah.
Like a 50 to 100 employee count threat.
So your traits, to what degree do they help set you apart versus the competitor? I'm gonna scroll down, make sure I get so green is a lot, blue is a little. Yellow, not at all. Your hours doesn't set you apart at all. Your parking doesn't set you apart at all. Location a little bit, your service a lot, name brands not at all, price a little. Selection, quality was by far and away. What, it seems like our businesses believe they're on a quality model, so.
Quality and service.
Exactly, yep, not unsurprising. Relative to other businesses in your trade, what price point do you target? Usually average, the high end, we don't have any low end retailers that were, or service industries popping into this one. You start to see the response numbers answered going down, so. These comments here, this is one of the questions I had to fix that was not working right, so that's hence those comments. This was about media buys. Where do you do your advertising? 23 answered. So out of that, where do you see people going? Newspapers, in terms of percentage, radio, TV, direct, window, you can see a very small percentage, right? Internet really picking up here in responses, surprisingly, where a lot of the advertising stuff, not surprising, I should say, but between internet and social media, which tracks through to service orders. I'll get down there. Don't advertise. I found that one interesting. Maybe doesn't need to. But when we get here to the actual local media market issues, a small amount of KTRS, otherwise none out of those local radio stations. That was interesting to me. TV networks, network TV, none. No one really going to TV. That one wasn't surprising given the size. What I did find interesting was here, the small amount of our local paper and a little bit of the business journal being used compared to a not or another. So, which is fine, not anything wrong with that. The business journal, that was one. And so Webster Kirkwood Times picked up 4. Yeah, small amount, not a big deal. Chamber of Commerce directory was added, some Soulard Renaissance looked like that. Somebody added that in. Businesses that complement. So these are some of the locals here. Euclid, SSM, Balkan Treat Box, the restaurants, Rolling Ridge, Clover and the Bee, the Opera Theater, Webster Times, Perennial. 3 businesses you'd like to see come. Venues with live music, Trader Joe's, Taco Bell, there's a fast food, that's interesting. Given some of the culture issues of that. Office Depot or supply store, better McDonald's, like you chuckle at that.
I would agree with that.
Co-working space or a FedEx office, that was interesting. Pasta House, again, more restaurant, it looks like, and a nursery function as well.
Pasta house, interesting.
Very specific.
Yes.
I worked there for like 10 years and like the salad is good.
So following events, do these following events increase foot traffic or sales volume? So these were some events that we had picked out and put on there. Old Webster Jazz Fest, Webster Arts Fair, I think is the highest responded. There's the Lions, 4th of July Parade and Lions Carnival, the Gazebo Series, the Old Webster Holiday Open House, the Rep Season and Opera Theater, and none of the above by far and away taking the most of that. So we'll see what the others specified here. Business Association events, Old Webster Girls Night Out. I love these events as a resident, but they do nothing for our business. So that's just one I just want to put that up. Spring, fall, and snow. So that was interesting too. 2 biggest non-work reasons people stop. Restaurants, specific establishment, the art fair, family dining, food, restaurants. Not to get into commentary, but really what I noticed is food and events keep popping up as reasons people come to Webster. 4 community assets you'd like to see develop most. I'm gonna let you look at the bar chart, but I'll scroll down to the numbers because I don't want to make sure I get the numbers correct here. I was surprised by some of this, so the number 1 respondent, now, a small number of responses, as you can see, but the number 1 respondent was transit across the city, on-demand transit, followed by Wi-Fi in the business districts, and then public parking, venues for business event training, bicycle traffic improvements. What fell down, EV charging stations at about 20% and expanded green space farther down. And we have some other specifications, public transportation again, and getting rid of business permit fees.
Public transport, what are people looking for exactly?
I remember that in the business roundtable, that came up there too. Kind
Yeah.
of similar to what Kirkwood has, as far as like, they've got like some sort of golf cart or, type of system that you can like call on demand and it totes you around, or I guess if you could say like similar, probably more functional than like a U City trolley type of deal. Wouldn't you agree that that was?
So I
what came
talked to
up?
him, and I'll explain it when we come back to that
Okay.
one, so we can get through the questions then. Other comments, questions? See those there? Yep. Challenges they're facing. So I'm gonna scroll down through this because it was tough to see all the answers the way it lays out, but I'll get down here to the actual data. There we go. So, business survey, minor challenges, major challenges, don't know, or they're not a challenge. Conflict with a building owner, not a challenge. I think that was the highest one. That was not a challenge. If I am correct, this is a big table, but I believe the products and the staff rose to the top in terms of what their challenges were.
Those are, yeah, that makes sense for the times that we're in.
Right. So,
We closed for a few days last week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So products and staff seem to be, if I remember right, I'll scroll through this, the highest, the minor challenge, and then in the major world as well, sort of as we look through things that are challenged. Now, again, not a great number of responses, but gives us some information. So what is one thing that you or your employees use information on or assistance with on these topics? So I'm going to scroll down again to that chart that, make it easier to see the responses. Here, I'll go to definitely not. I'm pretty sure the highest was how to transfer to sell a business and such. I believe the most useful actually for definitely was business planning. So helping businesses do some planning, and the probably, I'm pretty sure, was about employee, yes, it's employee hiring or training. Those were the two that sort of in both of those categories popped to the top. Which of the following business services would be useful to you? I'll scroll down through this again to make it easier to see and read. Chart. Visuals there. Go. What would be very useful? I believe that at the top was here. Not surprising in a way, a low interest business loan program. Excuse me, that's one of the high ones. Facade grant program was the high one at 44%. Now combined with the most useful and likely useful, it's about 66%. Low interest business loan program actually is at about 77, right? So they're both in that high level. We do have a facade grants in some places don't. Sign grant program also, scores pretty high. This was a very instructional chart for me as we talk about a plan. What are some of the things that we could look at? Now, again, small number of respondents though, so may not be everything. And then on the disagree or agree with the following statements, I'll scroll down as well, so you can see, oops, not too far here. I believe the top, strongly agree, the top ones were here. Feel safe in Webster Groves even at night, so safety is certainly coming through, which we appreciate. Local fire EMS are outstanding. Those two were the top respondents. Also here, I always direct customers to other local businesses were high. Seek ways to complement other local businesses. So again, small number of responses, but helpful. Somewhat useful highs. Trying to buy locally was a high number, as well as the existing Webster Grove business mix helps my business. So what we've got going on here helps. And the look and feel of Webster Groves helps my business. Strongly disagree, I believe was. Again, small number, but need transit solutions. So it's funny. So, and that's, you know, a small number of respondents, 2 people picked that one, but again, just wanted to point it out. Satisfied with the location of your business, very satisfied. Satisfied, neutral. So 20 people answered that question. Why? Picked it, easily to see, foot traffic, great walkability, convenient to downtown. Not sure which downtown, if that's Old Webster, Old Orchard, of course, which end of town you're on, we all have a different downtown, so might be Watson for all I know, so. Plans to expand or reduce operations, plans to expand, don't have any plans, there's a plan to reduce. I think the full answer is plan to expand product services or square footage, 6, obviously, yes, 11 of them don't have any plans. Small number of responses. Are you the building owner? Considering you as the owner or the building owner considering projects? Yes and no. So not seeing a lot of, at least in this response, capital need there. Other comments, questions, concerns, and I believe that's about how long it took to complete the survey. Additional thoughts, so I'll leave it there. Mike, that is it.
Good deal. Should we review the business roundtable stuff as well and then do
We can
open
do that.
commentary after that? Because I do think they kind of go together and I think for the sake of time,
We can do that.
I don't want to run out before it's off, but yeah.
This is the business roundtable. So I'll pull up and scroll through this. This is the notes that Fran took from the, well, we all took from the different tables. Good things or bad things as part of the pandemic were first. Many different comments in there. Almost feels like a year ago itself.
This was a while ago.
Yeah, was it November?
So,
It's cold.
Number one challenge, let's start there. I think this is more relevant to where we're going with this plan. The number one challenge of facing your business this year and the next, staffing popped out at me. Looking at one I highlighted here.
If
New
you
customers
look
up.
at, if you look at these several pages in total, a good significant percentage of them is all about people, employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my thoughts in this, maybe I'm getting ahead of the game here, but those, what do we want to do here? I would suggest we distill this whole thing down to maybe 3 items that are the most talked about.
Mhm.
I would agree with that. Staffing's a challenging one in the sense of, I talk about it with every business that I work with. I actually was joking around with the manufacturer today, so we'd all be billionaires if we could figure out how,
Right.
how to get people to come back to work and get everybody properly staffed. It affects every type of business, but I don't think we know what the solution is. So if you do, let me know.
Well, that's what we have to do. We have to create a solution, but
Yeah.
through some brainstorming.
I think if I'm correct, I know of 5 restaurants that have help wanted signs in their windows right now. A big part of that, and I'll just add some commentary that we hear when we talk with those folks is, employees don't live here, obviously. So how do they get here, right? In general, people with a car aren't gonna take that job. So how do I get somebody on a bus or a train out to Webster to wash my dishes? Staffing comes through on this one. I'll scroll back up real quick from the city side. Which doesn't have to necessarily be part of but what popped out real quick, lack of consistency and information, certainly something we had noticed here. Traffic management, that has come up many times, safety for pedestrians with walkability, business license fees, signage issues, and what can be happening and what can't. The whole idea about our attitude and sort of persona about, are we friendly to business? Are we going to help and be pro-business? And then, this one, not surprisingly, depends on who you get on the phone, right? On how the application process is going to go. So that consistency across the board when you work with us. Help with your business, staffing came up, parking we see, implied in that. There's some things I'm glossing over here, parking again. Pedestrian issues obviously came up. And then this was about the ARP question, what would you invest in? Infrastructure improvements, business accelerators, much of this went right in the ARP balancing act that we did. But again, you see the concept of parking that comes up again. One of the things you surprisingly don't see here, while you see PPE and such, an interesting, Bud, to your point, is when we talk about what to invest in, I think this is a real hard part. How do we attract staff? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because it's so hard. How do you do that, right? How do you make a program to build on that? So one of the things I noticed.
I'll throw one thought out. Well, that's being talked about. Being a member of the Chamber of Commerce Board, one of the things we find in attracting new members to the Commerce is the WEMA or MIWA. Is it MIWA? Yeah, MIWA. Availability for health care plans. They're like a share risk pool of healthcare plans that's supported by the state as well. And you have to be a member of a chamber of commerce. And you have to have at least 2 employees, but not more than 100. So we've gotten members join, businesses join the Chamber of Commerce just because they can offer that benefit to their
Right.
employees.
Yeah, but I've recommended a lot of people to join their local chambers because I used to sell health insurance and do not anymore, and to take the MEWAP program because it's pretty competitive. It's a strong program through Anthem. And it's generally cost competitive for a small business. So
Yeah. Mhm.
that's where I pushed all my health insurance business out to a few years ago. So something else that I've seen over the years on as far as if we're talking about transportation for employees, potentially like a bus voucher type of program to get employees from, other areas to come here. Cause like you said, I mean, they're not making the income to make it worth driving from point A to point B if they live 20 miles away, or they may not, have the transportation to. And that's something that I've seen some businesses do to, attract employees that has been fairly effective also. That there could be a subsidy for that, some of that money, if you think that would help.
Well, are we sure
Employee
that,
count.
that the service is here?
I don't know.
By state
Right.
provides
I-
the service?
Yeah.
Seems like somebody needs to. just
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
know if
Yeah.
that's even-
the bi-state has pulled routes out. I mean, they're
I
still
know
down
that-
Lockwood, but
Yes.
the route down Big Bend through Crossroads has been abandoned.
Has it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's a problem. Yeah,
right,
And it
so,
was used.
right.
it was.
The,
Yeah.
the on-demand micro transit that came up at the roundtable, I talked with them, and just to give everyone a sense of what that is. It is, they're electric golf carts, like a couple, 2, 3, 4 seats in them, and such. All branded and such, and you essentially have an Uber-like app. And so the city would pay them a flat fee.
Mhm.
They're the owners, they run the vehicles and such, and you call it up and it comes and picks you up and takes you to Schnucks or takes you between Old Webster and Old Orchard. And then you can use that as a transit type thing. Now, the difference is that it probably wouldn't get out to the metro stop in Shrewsbury, right? So how do you make that connection? But for those within Webster, within Webster Groves, it certainly operates. And it would
Yeah.
generally go across our entire city. So
Seems like it'd be better for customers than employees, don't you think? I
It
mean,
could be, I could see employees using it if they're gonna be moved into employee parking lots.
Yeah.
So if you are parking some distance away, and such, you could have that option if you don't wanna walk. But customers, it would probably be more customers than employees.
Hmm.
But I don't disagree with what you said. I mean, ultimately, looking ahead of this, trying to pull sort of the things that really could have an impact, even if they don't have an impact, right? There's that old FDR quote, try something, right?
Sure.
Even if it
Yeah.
fails, try something. And so I think the council's really looking forward to what's the best recommendation that the group is finding out from the input. And I don't want to speak for Council Member Bliss, but what are those things you see out of this? Is it staffing? Is it, infrastructure improvements? Is it transit? What do we do to start to build in that plan next week? What are you seeing pop up?
I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I think obviously supply chain labor with chronic issues coming up there, but that makes sense. And I don't know that there's an easy fix there. there were some infrastructure ones as far as, grants, signage grants, things like that. Did anybody else pull anything out as far as common trends that they saw or thought? Transportation, parking, stuff like that, but
I mean, is there any way the city, I'm just thinking out loud, may come out stupid. Could subsidize employees coming from farther out? I mean, we have one employee right now that drives in from Hillsborough. That somehow can help the business and to get employees from out where, if they live X amount of miles, something's added to their pay that can be worked through the city. I mean, if we're spending money, I'm just trying to think
Yeah,
on budgeting of how to get people to come here. And money obviously would be the
Well, it's.
easy.
It sounds like as far as getting people to come here, I think. We need to have a conversation with Bi-State and just say, what's the data from the last 5 years, 3 years, why are you dropping routes? Which routes are you dropping? I think the university has the same problem. That
I think so.
kids can't get there or here. So. How do we, I think, it seems like that's the root of the staffing is we just don't know if there's what public transportation there is to start with,
Sure.
and then figure out
Well, and that was kind of my thoughts
the
on like,
privatized stuff.
yeah, and that was my thoughts on like a bus voucher type of system. I mean, it doesn't help somebody in Hillsborough, but some
Right.
same concept as far as, using money as a or using some money as a
As an
subsidy to
incentive.
get people. to-
Yeah.
so for everyone, because I don't let your fears about whether or not the city can do it. I mean, we can always design a program to reach a targeted audience. I mean, whether or not the council approves it, that's another story. So
Sure.
I think this is a pretty free space to think pretty broadly, on what you're hearing again from this, right? I mean, and then we can start to put some meat on that bone as we head into next week. And we don't have to finish this all next week, but it's really, trying to find those priorities that we know as staff, what to start giving you some help on recommendations on.
Is there-
I'd like to raise my hand. I had a conversation just this morning about small businesses finding people to work for them anyway. And I think everybody is aware of that being a problem. But my portion of that conversation was like, well, how do people even know when somebody in a small business environment is looking for people? It's not as easy as, the old days where you looked at reliable sources like newspaper ads. Right now you've got, it's really hard, I think, to find. If I was a small business in Webster Groves, I'd be kind of frightened that it's pretty hard to find somebody. So I don't know if there's a way that we can support that, but if there is, that would be a good idea. Secondly, I think this transportation piece is, from my perspective, not so much from the outside people coming in as it is because we have these diverse business districts. And once you park in Webster, you don't really want to, you might want to go from Old Webster to Old Orchard, or maybe as far as Maypop or something, but you don't really want to have to keep driving your car around. So I'm of the opinion that it's more about intra-Webster transportation, but that begs the question of how much demand there is even for that and when that might be worth having. But I think a Saturday, Sunday, maybe a couple nights of the week could accommodate that.
What, Andrew, Pam, do you guys have anything to add, any comments? You guys are both muted, by the way.
Okay. I wonder if as a group, if we maybe need to sort of organize our thoughts into just several really large categories. One would be the employment, getting people in, transportation. I was reading another list that Fran sent over that had a lot of really neat ideas on it that I think obviously were gleaned from other places other than our surveys. I don't know, Eric, what stage you're at in terms of, You know, there was that huge 20-page document, maybe even more, that there were some comments on it, but mostly it was listing stuff like fund high school entrepreneurship programs and
Oh, sure.
yeah, what,
Yeah,
where
so
is that information coming from as opposed to what we've just been looking at and reviewing?
Sure, so that came out of the balancing act, that gamify way of doing budgeting. That was with the American Rescue Plan. So those items were sort of synthesized out of the business roundtable notes. That's where a lot of that came from. And then also some other thoughts from council members and folks that we had heard from. So that information is online if you want it. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate having that. It's a little bit broader than what you're talking about, which, and now that you said where it was all coming from, it makes some sense to me. But there's a lot of interesting stuff on there that maybe if we are making recommendations from this group, that we should at least say, yeah, we really like this, in addition to, you know, what we found out from our own surveys. That's just an idea. I didn't know how far this group was going to go in terms of recommendations to the council, or saying, yeah, we agree with you on that. I guess I just don't have it in my mind exactly what on paper or, you know, online is going to summarize this particular exercise from the BDC. And it's maybe down the road than I am, but I'm trying to think in terms of categories and in terms of what our role is here, not just to dig up the information, which I think really was a terrific project, but just to see whether we go the one step farther in terms of what Webster is going to do with the funding.
Maybe I can tag on to what Pam just said. Remembering when I first started teaching at Webster University in the late 90s, I think, before the internet took over things, there was some kind of communication at the university on billboards of job opportunities in Webster Groves. If we go a step further on that, could we think about having a co-op with the university itself and its website to post jobs on their own website that are available? There's a pool of hundreds of kids, hundreds of young people that go to that university, either part-time or full-time, that might look for at least a part-time job, but they don't know what's available unless they go look. But if you put it right in front of them, that might be a little bit of mining we can do to find employees for our businesses.
Probably added through the city website too.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, there's organizations that you could just contact, like STL Youth Jobs and some other organizations that are
Yeah,
not so 63119 local, but that we could tap into for different, to widen the pool of people.
Sure. But I mean, I think everybody's hiring right now. I mean, for the most part, probably like 90% of businesses would hire more people if they wanted to. So the issue is that people aren't coming in, qualified applicants are not walking in the door. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, if
Or
you
even any applicants, probably in a lot of cases.
I don't want to short circuit. I mean, we can put down, I've got it written down, sort of marketing and the creative ways to amplify the job opening pool, right? I mean, to get into other places and other markets, but I did want to make sure we have to be out of here by 5:30 out of this room for the next
Okay.
meeting. So I want to make sure to get Andrew.
Yeah, let's see what Andrew has to say. I have to probably get going before 5:30 for sure too, but.
I have to go in 5, everyone. I appreciate it. I don't have much to add right now. I mean, it's just something I'm just trying to think about. I mean, I don't really have any bright ideas for how to address this particular issue. I'm certainly happy to think about it.
I can raise my hand again.
Yep.
Back to what Pam was saying on the ARP Balancing Act. I also thought that was very interesting and had some gritty stuff in it. And one of them is fund a home repair program. And the reason that interests me conceptually is that it brings up a concept that's even bigger, which is that you can have something like a You Can Do enter our business district that is all about home renovation, which tends then to educate people, which tends then to maybe provide a network for employment for those types of jobs. Or it can be about the restaurant industry, which is probably where a lot of those employee needs are coming for, because that's such a big part of our thing. But maybe a culinary center could be a new business idea in Webster that could train people, and ultimately those people then are used to coming in on the Webster, they're making friends in Webster, they go to work at those places in Webster. So I liked the idea of investing in wherever that ARP thing went, with that kind of thing in mind. You know, we can solve two birds with one stone. We can develop more businesses, and we can get people into our community in fun ways, educating them, and cool ways educating them. And then solve some of those employment problems if we identify which businesses. Now, if they're in the insurance business and they're looking for people, I'm not really sure how we do that, but maybe Mike's got an idea for.
I
how
got
to
you on that.
So I just have up there right now so you all can see it. This is the ARP specific to business, that subcategory. The number one response that came back, this would have been more than businesses responding, was actually in terms of a small business micro grant fund. So back to capital in a way, providing grants and such, but that may have changed since this was done in December, January, you know, over the turn, so for the calendar. And there's more than just business items on this, so that you have all this information, and if not, we'll make sure to get it out to you.
This is it, maybe if
The
you could just send
co-working
out-
space is very, very good idea still. People are working more from home, but then what happens is that they get forced out of their homes by children being in the home, and they don't really want to go driving as far as they used to. So co-working spaces become helpful.
Cece, that's a great idea. My daughter, for one, has been working at home since she moved back to St. Louis from KC. And she's been looking for a co-working space.
Right,
In months.
right.
Not a lot around. And I mean, she works for a company that's based in Kansas City, so what are you gonna do? But I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
that-
and a lot of people in Webster are in those types of professions
Right.
that they don't want to drive back out to Boeing if they don't have to, right? And but they can't necessarily be in their homes. So I think there could be a market for that, and that would bring in more people as well.
Mhm.
I think that could be a good idea too. I agree with that. I mean, it's not directly helping a retailer in Webster, but it is because it's bringing more people into that area, and they're going to shop and they're going to eat and everything else. It's kind of like bringing a new big business into Webster, but facilitating small business growth.
Right, right. So on that investing in Webster Grove housing thing, there is the home repair program, there's green improvement program, down payment assistance program. What was the fourth one here? New housing. Yeah, maybe not, but the other three things could become stops. You know, they could become people that are bringing business into Webster Groves to help educate people.
That's right.
Looking through the survey, I mean, the three things that popped up to me, and there's some that didn't pop up that I want to address. Obviously, people, as we've talked about, staffing, right? You know, that need, how do we bring workforce availability? And I think it's more than just transit in some regards. I think it's also, there's some, I mean, immigration concerns affect all that. I mean, as people move around and have jobs, inflation certainly affects that. Lots of things. I saw infrastructure, namely the big ones popping up, facade grant, sign grant is a possibility, you know, that marketing, that how do you have this, the good look and feel of Webster help. I think one of the things that was not brought up in that wasn't mentioned, that I do think I put back on the table, is the three business districts all collect special taxes to help incentivize that program, those types of programs, and make them helpful. Watson I'll just say is sort of like for the whole Watson area, there's the forgotten underbelly of Webster Groves, right? And we don't proudly announce ourselves as Webster Groves down there, down by that strip mall. So that's one, but again, like Maypop and that whole area up in that area, there is no extra tax being paid to help that. So is this an area where you invest? Just putting that back on the table. And then,
Thank you.
but then also, I looked at, I just came back a small number, but the idea about business planning was interesting to me. About, what do we do for businesses and do they need help with those concepts as well? Just, those are the top ones that rolls out to me, but again, what are you guys all hearing and what are you thinking so that we can start to put some plans together to help?
I don't know how a city helps with that. I mean,
We would essentially be subsidizing people to help, we would probably be buying that service and then you can apply to use that service. That's how other cities do it. So
they did do that, really?
other cities have done that, yeah.
Mhm.
So it's essentially like business education, right? So if we saw a lot of that, especially when COVID hit, right? Who was helping people fill out their idols?
Yeah.
Around here is probably a lot of bankers. In Arizona, where we were at, it was all government.
Sure.
Because the bankers had no real concept or interest to do it.
Mhm.
So the government economic development team stepped in to do that kind of work. And that's cultural in the certain markets, so.
I mean, two thoughts come to mind. I mean, there are banks in town that specifically grow local. That's their big thing,
Yep.
and they invest in minority businesses or, different groups to help promote local, and they say 95% of the dollars stay and say, which is true. So maybe there is like a bank partnership, or some, we could, go after who's in town and who's not in town and see what programs they have for small businesses that we could tap into. And then the other thing is, it seems like connecting the business districts physically and conceptually stands out. When we
I
talk
would
about
agree with
transit.
Pam. I've been I've been out at MOBAP this week. My husband's been in the hospital and the wayfinding is so important. It's just amazing how important it is. And I think we don't really do a good enough job of that in terms of making everything harmonious around Webster Groves.
My question for you, because every board, everything I've sat on has brought up that same thing. Physically, how could you possibly,
Well, we were just talking about the little micro transit
Right,
system.
but
That's,
even-
that's the kind of the physical.
even those, if you've
way
got
of doing
2-hour parking, in all these spots, how long does it take to get down to Old Orchard then? And because you don't want to move your car.
I have a hard time with that whole idea of moving your car. It's not that hard.
I don't think so either.
Well, and I just don't know, I mean,
So
how
I
many will we
think-
have? 2 or 3 of them? And then like, how long are you waiting for a ride
Right.
potentially if it's during a peak hour?
And it
I
would
don't want
be-
to wait 30 minutes to
No.
go across town. I'll
No,
just get in my car.
it'd be expensive.
But that's
Yeah,
the
it would.
conceptual aspect of it, is,
Right.
just saying it's easy to get from A to B, I mean.
If the city wants to
So
buy
it's-
a bus that just
it really
drives a
is-
loop around Webster and you give times and say,
Sure.
Right,
It'd be
no, I
like-
get
Well, I
it.
mean, we have trolleys at different times, and maybe you just, start with that, or maybe trolley's not a good word.
I-
But, maybe some, in June, obviously June's a big week, big time for retail.
Mhm.
And so maybe we start doing a summer program or just see, trials. But I think this is like a long campaign. This is like months to years of really hammering it out.
Yeah.
And
Well,
really
one of
sticking-
the times that it's totally missing is during these big events, like the Webster Holiday event in Old Webster. And I have for years said to my son, who's up there by Maypop, I'm like, why isn't the trolley going all the way up there and
Yeah.
going around over there? And he said, we don't support that. Those people in Old Webster are paying for what they're doing. And
Mhm.
so
That's
maybe
what the
that's
city
the
is.
experiment. You just,
Yeah.
you go
Yeah.
through these times, like when there's Jazz Fest, maybe it's important that people are moved from Old Orchard down to Old Webster.
But I
Right?
think there's there is
Yeah.
a point too, that Old Webster is paying for money for
Right.
Jazz Fest, so it's, counterintuitive for Old Webster to take people away from Jazz Fest. And I get that if you're on Old
Yeah,
Webster Trade Association and you're
right.
ponying up money for it,
Yeah.
you don't want to take people.
We spent a great amount of budget.
Oh,
on-
yeah.
On that.
So
But
may-
you
may-
have to be to
right.
think of business brings business, and so. I think if we can think more holistically
yeah,
as a trial, it just seems to be, it would be worth investigating.
Yeah,
I
we
just-
don't have to do
yeah.
100%.
Go ahead.
We just do like 2 events this year, like, you know, the holiday thing and maybe the arts festival, but that already happened. And the, what was the other one we were just talking about? The jazz festival, right? Where there's a lot of restaurants in Old Orchard and those people would need to get from there to the facility and back.
It kind of goes both ways, you know, there's Old Orchard events, there's the gazebo series, there's
But
the,
if you're going to
and
the gazebo
seminary,
series,
and then
why
you-
would you want to come up here? You're down there for the music. And same
because
thing with
maybe,
the Jazz Fest. Why, you're coming for the live music. Why would you want to leave?
I don't think people are that specifically minded like that. I think they're thinking more. They're not making one decision and going, well, I don't want to go there. I have a taste for a snow cone. I want to go to Parkmore, and they just get down there and then they go back. I think it's more fluid than just saying, I'm gonna go to the street dance and I'm gonna stay in Old Webster that night.
You want to get Pam? before-
Yeah, Pam, you want to go ahead? Did you have something to add?
We didn't hear you.
Pam?
Oh, I was just saying, because of this long-term and probably never-ending issue of the districts and the taxing districts and, because it's been going on so long. Maybe someone said earlier, Pam, maybe, that, maybe it should be subsidized by the city, some kind of a bus or something that would just, move people around. It could be, as Cece said, an experiment using just a couple of activities. I don't know. But, you know, like Mike and some other people, I've heard these discussions for years.
Yeah.
And, you know, we used to rely sometime on a trolley from Llewellyn's. You just can't always rely on the goodness and the creativity of local businesses or other subgroups. I think the city might have to step in at some point.
Well, we're only talking about $100,000 on the ARB funding, so it's not a lot of money relatively speaking.
So I don't think you're wrong about the city stepping in, because obviously Old Webster, Old Orchard money can't be spent outside of those districts. You're right. I mean, that's all limited. So I don't want to belabor that conversation, but there's a, you know, even as we talk about the plan to take to council, there's a longer term idea, right, of recommendations. I'm not saying merge the districts. Don't quote me on all that. I'm just saying if that is like how to build cohesion between the districts, that's a much longer thing than here's how we take $100,000 and get it spent by 2026 in a way that helps
Right.
business, right? Or recommend to council, spend another $200,000 for this project and such, so.
Right.
I do remember Laura specifically saying, and Mike, were you there? Who presented?
Or Bob did.
Or Bob presented, yeah, I was
Okay.
out of town.
Okay, so that, I'm just gonna reiterate what Laura said is, you know, can you go through the tasks that staff is already doing
Mhm.
and, you know, relate that to a number of hours or some of the requests? I think we need to think about the $100,000 as the one document, and you talk about business liaison and then other programs as coming from all in one place.
Yeah.
Are you
I like-
combining the two? Is that what you're talking about?
Basically, that's what the $100,000 is for, is to what do we need to spend on a business liaison if we need to? And what other programs can we do? It's the whole idea is just how to flush out the $100,000.
That's
Eric, sorry, Eric, I happen to just in theory, I like the idea of providing special consulting or specialized training to businesses, you know, like maximizing social media is something that comes to mind. I also know that these things have come up over in the past years, and I'm interested in Tim and others' thoughts. And I think there's been some issues in prior years where there just hasn't been much interest in that from the business community. Or, you know, it's hard. It's easy to say, hey, you're gonna have a how to maximize your social media training today, and it's just adding another item to somewhat schedule, and in practically speaking, these things don't end up working out, but it certainly sounds good to me.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, an achievable thing that might, but I mean, again, I misspoke. It sounds like a good thing on paper or in theory, and I'm interested in feedback on whether or not it would actually be useful in practice.
I think it's personally great. I just know, we used Digital Strike a lot. It's expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
it is not cheap.
Right.
And I'm one business that's paying $4,000 a month for them to be doing some of our social media stuff.
Mhm.
And that's just part of it. So to bring it to a business, I mean, I don't know, you'd have to pay somebody to be specialized in that could be around for business. I mean, it'd be wonderful. I mean, we work on it every day on our own. And my wife is very well versed in all this stuff. And I know a lot of people out here are not versed in this
Mhm.
at all. I'm not. It's very hard when you start to get into it. But yeah, any help that could be provided on that aspect, people should have their arms open to take any information they can get.
Yeah.
Maybe we do bring in a speaker, have an event with a speaker, twice a year, to go over the new trends and different ways.
What if you had like just I can't think of anything, a fair, and you invite several firms to come present, it's more like you get Digital Strike at your table.
Symposium.
I'm sorry?
A symposium.
Yeah,
Different
symposium where people are exposed to several different firms, and then that way you can kind of pick, and you're gonna have the high end and you're gonna have the generic, or the more nonprofit oriented people and the big business people, and just expose people to,
Bring them together.
So
yes.
you see a lot of program design, Andrew, what you're talking about, and these types of things doesn't necessarily have to be the government doing it fully. It could be, business education. So whether it be how to create a business plan, understand your own sense of inventory and finance of your own business, or it's in media and marketing, could be in the legalities of, exporting. It could be weed, right? Cannabis, as that becomes a business for all things. We're not saying Webster's big on that, but get my point. But the program design doesn't even have to be us doing it. I mean, the symposium or an idea of that, bringing a vendor in is good, but it's really a lot of ways like the potential of the business districts do with lighting.
Yeah.
We've created a program. Here's a list of vendors, or even the person
Yeah.
you want to, if it's really about your education and growing your business and how to do that, working with a consultant or a designer or such, we'll cover 30%, 40%, 50%, 75% of the cost. You provide us the detail and that information, the documentation, and we're cutting a check back to you to, essentially subsidize a piece of that, so it's really not us doing the work. It's us helping to cover the cost of enhancing the business plan.
Yeah, I think something like that could be a good idea. So I have to run probably in 4 minutes. So I can just step out and you guys keep talking. You have until 5:30, right? Can somebody pick up to end, or should we? sit
can.
and wait?
I think we're getting into a lot of program plan design. I mean, I want to go back to, I really like Bud's idea. What are the top 3, maybe 4 things that we want to see us start to put some meat on the bone
Yeah,
as staff to help you, with a recommendation. I think staffing and employment, right? Workforce recruitment. I think we all agree on that one. Let me know if we don't. You want to talk about infrastructure, facades, sign grants, things like that, or is that something you're not keen on?
I think for top 4, it's fine to keep it in there. I
Okay.
mean, for now, we're still missing feedback from, a few members of the
Okay.
PDC.
That would include the co-working space that we talked about.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll just put that in that bucket. And then,
Or a business service like a FedEx. It's already,
okay,
Can I suggest another thing?
Go ahead, Bob.
Because this discussion has been great, but it's scattered. It's got a lot of things that we're talking about all at once. And some of these things, we won't even remember what we said. Next week, we talk about them again. My thought is that those top 3, but if we could just agree that the most important thing right now, because things are going to change over time too. And none of these things are going to be solved in 24 hours. Maybe 24 months, 24 years, who knows? But if we just agree on the top item, and if the top item is, how do we help our businesses find employees? And just identify that problem. If that's not the right way to identify it, identify what the problem is specifically, and that we go to work on that and put everything else aside and try to be successful with the number one goal, whatever that number one goal is. It's going to take a lot of effort to do that. And by the time we got a solution for that, some of these other things might change in their needs. My suggestion. So next week's meeting then, if that's the item we want to talk about and start actually drawing up a plan to implement it, then focus on that and put everything else aside for now.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that's the most common trend, right?
Was that the number one?
That was, yeah, that rose.
By far,
Yeah,
yeah.
By far in terms of the comments, staffing and such.
Yeah.
And that, just so you know about the business liaison proposal, we'll still do our work on the staff modeling of that and where things are. That, you know, this is really about, how do we invest money in some way and such? Nor should you think that $100,000 is it. I mean, if you come up with a great plan for number 2 or 3, or number 1 needs more, the council has more at its disposal to be able to put it that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and then we can look at, is there any opportunity for writing grants? Get some government money to fund that.
That's a great idea, yeah.
I happen to know a city manager's spouse who heads workforce issues for the St. Louis County, so that's perfect.
Well, let me
Good
ask you this. Did our survey tell us who is having issues with staffing or what types of businesses? Because again, I'm going to bet on restaurants, but that could be way off base.
CC, it's all of them. I mean, I work with every type of business. Everybody's having staff concerns.
I can look at those cross tabs, CC. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I guess it's across sectors.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say on Facebook this week, there was a person, kind of a Mike, but she said she was a lawyer. And she said, I come in contact with businesses every single day and everybody tells me that they need somebody. If you need a job, let me know and I'll put you guys together. And there, last time I looked, which was yesterday, I think there were 58 responses.
Sure.
And they were all kind of medium range, like I do this, that, the other thing. They weren't high level people, but that's of course where the need is with the medium to low skill.
So we'll start with that. If
Let's
that
start
works
with
for
that.
everyone.
Yeah.
I think add into that as you think about that program design, because we talk about recruiting, bringing people into those opportunities. Add into it, what does business need to make sure that those opportunities can be enacted, right?
Yeah.
Is the pay enough, right? I mean, why aren't people taking the job if they're hitting your door? You don't have to answer that now. Put that in your brain to think about next week as we look at some drafts that we put together.
Sounds good. So next
Sounds
meeting's on
good.
23rd.
Yep.
That's the one I'm not gonna be here for because I'm out of town.
I will not be here either.
You also won't be here. So we have to see if we have a quorum, I guess. But let's go ahead and adjourn and then we'll find out if we have enough people for the 23rd, but let's make that our plan for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
So, all right, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody that was on TV.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
I'm so
Bye.
bad.